Committee will please come to order. I would invite you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we will open the hearing on Senate Bill 409 relative to disaster relief loans and call upon the sponsor, Senator Prentice. Good afternoon.
Thank you for having me here today to introduce Senate Bill 409. Again, for the record, my name is Suzanne Prentice. I'm the state senator from District 5, representing 9 communities in the beautiful Connecticut River Valley of New Hampshire. Okay, so again, I'm here today to introduce 409. This would amend RSA 21P 37-C to further clarify how communities can obtain an emergency loan from the state for recovery from a catastrophic natural disaster. In the summer of 2021, parts of Cheshire and Sullivan County were impacted by 2 different storms, damaging roadways, key pathways to work, to school, and impacting the sustainability of the local economies. These communities include, but are not limited to, Charlestown, which is in my district, District 5, and Ackworth, which is in District 8. The 3 to 4 inches of rain that fell on Ackworth, in particular, on that night of one of the storms, July 29th through 30th, washed out roads, damaged bridges, and destroyed culverts. Around 30 roads, 3/4 of the town's total roads were damaged, according to an engineer that was hired to oversee the repairs. Over a period of months, necessary repairs have waited, and some still do, part to the lack of local dollars immediately available to address these issues while waiting for federal help to arrive. And I just want to emphasize as we go through this that I am in no way looking to upend the federal process, just create another pathway for communities to obtain, again, a non-interest bearing loan from the state to make some of the immediate repairs to their infrastructure. So when we look at Ackworth in particular, they have under 900 residents and they have a budget that's shy of $3 million. But repairs were estimated at more than $1 million initially. The amount estimated provided exceeded the town's immediate ability and traveled over what was, in Charlestown, a separate community, school children were traveling over what is close to a Class 6 road in order to get to schools due to a delay in necessary repairs. It was imprinted on me at that point that if we could find a way to move funding to these communities more expediently, again in the form of a no-interest loan, while we would be able to address the safety and economic issues presented while the federal disaster relief process is underway. Although work to this effect has been done through the exceptional disaster relief loans, I'm asking for one more option to be added into this. So I think we all know that FEMA, our Federal Emergency Management Agency, and we have folks here from the state's Homeland Security and Emergency Management Agency that can maybe answer some of the more technical, not maybe, they will be able to answer the more technical questions. We know that the disaster relief reimbursement process can take time and sometimes years. Temporary emergency loan is particularly helpful when a disaster would financially overwhelm a community and require a large appropriation raised from local taxes. And as I described with a community like Ackworth, their budget is smaller than what they were going to end up having to pay to repair the roads that were damaged. They had a town meeting, they had an emergency town meeting where they were able to get approval to borrow $2.1 million. And again, look at the size of the community, look at the size of their budget, and think about the damage that's been done. And they don't even have all of the repairs done to their roads, as has impacted my district in Charlestown as well. So the amending language in Section 2A enables the process to move forward more quickly by empowering the governor, after declaring a state of emergency, with the consent of the Executive Council or the Joint Fiscal Committee, to authorize a loan. Furthermore, it specifies that the loan to the municipality should be interest-free. Subsection 2C, line 12, further clarifies that the municipality takes care to ensure that it does not knowingly apply for funds that are not eligible under FEMA criteria. Both the State Division, again, of Homeland Security and Emergency Management, and FEMA can provide guidance to a community, and they do during this process. Subsection 2D, line 15, establishes the reimbursement deadline and the amount to be reimbursed. Upon receiving FEMA funds, the city or town has 60 days to pay back its loan to the state. If FEMA has approved an amount less than the original loan, the municipality is only obligated to pay back the amount received from FEMA. If the municipality receives more from FEMA because the final costs of the disaster were higher than originally estimated, the repayment to the state is only for the amount of the loan that they received from the state. This protects the municipality from yet another unanticipated expense that would have significant detrimental impact on its tax base and overall economic well-being. And with that, I'm going to conclude my testimony and just say that I humbly ask, actually, before I conclude it, I'll just say this. We have a mechanism in place to take this to the Executive Council as it currently stands, but what we don't have, and what this does, is put the governor into the mix by having the governor say that declare it a disaster area, and then they can they can go to the Executive Council, or they can go to joint fiscal to ask for this non-interest loan so they can more immediately start addressing their infrastructure problems. It worried me. I mean, again, Ackworth saw considerable damage from this event that they just could not simply afford due to the size of their community. And we know there's other communities out there in New Hampshire and all of our districts that are small. But when in another example, in my district, Charlestown, again, children were riding school buses over what was close to a Class 6 road, and the town was really concerned in the wintertime about their ability to manage buses or even private vehicles over a road that is not heavily traveled. Both of these communities had to make alternative arrangements for public safety responses for fire, police, and emergency medical services because of the damage that's been done. So I am here asking not for funding, but a mechanism, just adding an option in here with the governor making it a state of emergency and the community being able to either go to the Executive Council or the Joint Fiscal Committee. None of this without working through the normal FEMA process. Okay, that might be as clear as mud, but I'll hope to clean it up with answers to questions you might have. And I humbly ask that you support this bill with an ought-to-pass motion and help our local communities in these desperate times.
Thank you, Senator D'Alessandro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think you got the right idea. I think that the perception of how to do it is incorrect. The governor and Executive Council cannot appropriate any money. Once upon a time, many years ago, we did have a fund. The Executive Council had a fund. It was about $150,000. It was an emergency fund that no longer exists. So there's no power on the part of the executive to appropriate. I think your premise is correct, that you would go to the Legislative Fiscal Committee or to the appropriate committee in a standing committee in the legislature and ask that a no interest or a low interest loan be provided to cover the work that's being done, because the work should be done ASAP. If you wait for FEMA, it's a long period of time. So you ask for the money as a loan, and you pay the money back when you get the money from FEMA. I think that's the procedure, and I believe that's the procedure that was used for the Olmsted floods. Now, in addition to that, the state also paid the full 25% in the Olmsted funds, and it relieved the community of paying the 12.5%. So I think it's a mechanical situation of how it's done. That really, if we prove this, I think that has to be corrected, because the appropriate funding authority is the legislature. And but I think you're on the right track. And I might say that you'll never, you'll never get it done by borrowing money from the bank, because you'll go way beyond your ability to pay it. But you do need the money ASAP. I think that's the key issue, and there is a better mechanism for doing that. So I agree with you, and I hope we can work it out. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman.
Further questions? Senator Morse.
Yep, I'm trying to understand so we do a loan, FEMA comes in short of the loan amount that we do, the money, the difference between what FEMA pays and what we gave a loan for, how's that handled?
At the municipal level.
So that's their money, they pay it?
If FEMA comes, so FEMA should be coming in, and we have the Homeland Security staff here that assist with this, but they're responding to the estimates that are provided to them. They come in at 80%, and then there's that, or 75%, and then there's that split. If the estimate is less than what we have loaned them, then they're gonna have to pay the state back for that amount.
Okay, I thought when you testified, you said that they don't have to pay it back, but,
No, if we loan them more than they get back, then they're gonna have to pay us back.
Further questions? I do have one. On line 9, you took out the words per occurrence. Could you explain that?
I actually would need to check with Senator Gaida on this, because I didn't take those out, I actually think that Senator Gaida may have made those changes. I did note that in here, so I need to follow up with these senators.
Okay, because I would submit that you need to have something in there. Otherwise, you have an occurrence like Ackworth just went through. You've already had something that exceeds your budget. And now you could have something come in that's less than your budget. But when you put the two projects together, you're always going to be over your budget. Understand what I'm saying? Any further questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much. Chair will recognize Catherine Heck from the NHMA, speaking in support of the bill.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and committee members. My name is Catherine Heck from the Municipal Association, and we're here to support this bill. We would like to see municipalities have avenues to get this quicker turnaround in funding, and we'd be agreeable to working with any type of language changes necessary to make this happen. I certainly don't want to repeat the testimony of Senator Prentice, but we do support this bill and its intent. Thank you. I'll take any questions.
Thank you. Questions from the committee? Seeing Senator Morse.
still trying to clarify what I was asking about. The legislation in D says when the municipality receives the FEMA money, they will pay back the state with the FEMA money, and then it says whichever is less. If there's not enough FEMA money, who pays the difference?
I certainly see your concern in this language, and that should be clarified because, of course, the state would not go without the money that it loaned. The municipality would then have to take that on, is my understanding of the intent of the legislation. So that language should definitely be clarified, sir. That the municipality would have to pay it
It actually would be an
back.
appropriation at that point that has to be accounted for, so.
Further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chair has Senator Bob Guider in favor, but not speaking, and Jen Harper. Yes,
Can I just say two things, just to clarify what Senator Morse was asking?
Please state your name.
Yep. So, good afternoon. My name is Jen Harper. I'm the Director for Homeland Security and Emergency Management. So, with regard to if community comes in and, just making this up, asks for $5 million, a loan to make repairs necessary ASAP. FEMA comes in a few months later and says your eligible reimbursement is $4 million. The town is responsible for paying the state back that $1 million difference. That's in a rule that we have. HSEM has a rule that outlines how the exceptional disaster relief loan is managed. So it's in the
Is that
rule.
what section D says?
We could probably work to clarify it a little, tighten it up. Yeah.
Follow up?
And help me understand, because when I was looking into this last fall, I thought under current law, we had the ability to already provide a loan.
We do, the exceptional disaster relief loan. That's what this Senator Prentice is asking for, a change to that. That's what this is. A change to that exceptional disaster relief loan bill, law.
Further questions? Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak that has not spoken? If not, I will close the hearing on Senate Bill 409.
I think so.
I need signage. Okay, I will open the hearing on Senate Bill 445 and recognize the sponsor, Senator Hennessy.
Good afternoon, Chairman Daniels, members of the Senate Finance Committee. Aaron Hennessy, State Senator for District 1. It's nice and snowy up there, so come on up and go skiing. I am here to introduce Senate Bill 445, and before you, you have amendment number 0416S, which replaces the bill. We all supported last year creating a broadband matching fund with Senate Bill 85, which Senator Bradley had sponsored, and recognizing which the pandemic greatly highlighted the need for expanding broadband services within our state. This fund was created. What this bill does is to fund that fund at no less than $35 million, and it changes the match to 75% versus 50%. So it'll use more funds to match local funds, which I think all of our municipalities and constituents will benefit from. There is one technical correction that needs to be made to the amendment, and someone from the BEA will tell you about that piece. Happy to take questions.
Question, Senator Morse.
Yeah, Senator, the 120-some million federal funds that are coming into New Hampshire, how do they relate to this account?
It's my understanding that all of those could go into this account. However, we don't know that if the federal government is ever going to come out and make changes to that, because they've changed rules in the past. So my wording on here says not less than the sum of $35 million. So You can up that to $122 million if you like. I just wanted to make sure that there was a minimum number that went into this fund.
Follow up.
The number that was needed in the state when we originally started looking at opera funds was 60-some million total. The number of 120 million came from somebody in Washington. We didn't ask for it, but it seemed like it was going to far exceed what we needed. I guess the clarification is that money going to come today? And if it is, why would we need to appropriate 35 million?
My goal of the appropriation is to make sure that the money is appropriated to a fund where everyone out there that's working on these projects already knows what they need to do to get this money. So if we want to appropriate the $90 million, which might be the number that we actually need, I would love to put that number in here. I just want to make sure that everyone knows that these funds are coming, because we're getting a lot of phone calls about when the money will be here.
Further questions? I have one. I'm sorry? Senator D'Alessandro, Senator Rosenwald?
Thank you. Could you talk a little bit about your change from 50% to 75%?
This is working with the department. That is their recommended change, and my agreement and excitement that there would be
So we should
75
ask
versus
them.
50. Yes.
Thank you.
Senator D'Alessandro?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was really the nature of my query also. Is someone here that's going to answer that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Further questions? I understand the intent to be to use the funds from ARPA, correct? When you follow that with a statement that, well, first of all, it says the governor shall determine if any discretionary funds appropriated in ARPA can be used for this purpose. That's one thing, but then it goes on to say that the governor is authorized to draw a warrant for the general fund portion of such fund from any money in the treasury not otherwise appropriated. If we were to accept this as it is currently written, and we were not able to use those funds from ARPA, this authorizes the governor to take 35 million out of the general fund for this purpose?
Yes, that's in the extreme circumstances where we don't actually get the federal government funding that they've promised the state of New Hampshire.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Chair recognizes Mark Lilibitic from BEA.
Good afternoon, Mark Liberty from Candia. I am the Broadband Project Manager for Business and Economic Affairs across the street. Wanted to discuss both the amendment and maybe answer some of the questions that came up during Senator Hennessy's testimony. First, I think most important about the funding. The funding, which is called Capital Projects Fund, was a tranche of funding from ARPA. Back in September, we received guidance from the federal government on the $122 million. On September 24th, the portal to U.S. Treasury opened. On September 29th, we applied through State Treasury for those funds. In December, we were accepted for those funds. And in fact, Treasury has signed a grant agreement with U.S. Treasury and has since sent that over. So we're in the process of receiving funds. I don't know where we stand in terms of if we're just going to get the administrative funds first, which I understand, or the entire amount. As we hear more about that, we'll work through the process of getting it through fiscal and doing what needs to be done in regards to that. I'm working with Chase over at Gopher in our office, Chase Hagerman, and he and I are working together on that. So the funding will not be coming from the state, it will be coming from the federal funds. Just so that's a little bit of background about the resources there. The 50 to 75% match. Since September, where I've started over at the Broadband Matching Grant Initiative, we've talked to the providers, we've talked to municipalities, and we realized there would be some communities that even at a 50% match, it would be difficult to be able to get the build out there. At 75%, our sense is we're pretty much going to be able to get to most, if not all, of the communities that are looking to expand their broadband access. Also, the other reason we're looking to move to 75% is there's this yet another amount of money, which is the IIJA, the infrastructure bill. The state will be receiving approximately at least $100 million, possibly more. And that fund, so those funds, which are called BEAD, those funds need to go to our build out in unserved or underserved areas as well. And in that amount of money, there's a 25% match requirement. So our feeling is that if we get to a point where we need those funds, we would be able to do that because the Broadband Matching Grant Initiative already is at that level of that the state would provide 75% and that the municipality or the provider would provide the 25%. So that moves the way for what may come later. So that's that. And then a couple other things in the bill. What we wanted to do was make sure that the Broadband Matching Grant Initiative was be compatible with the federal funding so that when we work with the providers and the municipalities, that the funds could go in there and that there'd be minimum of issues in terms of whether this funding was eligible or not. So the biggest thing that we've done, the two big ones are ceding to the federal guidance in terms of speed. The state sees broadband defers to the Telecom 1996 bill, and that gets updated every now and again in terms of speed. And currently, broadband is considered 25 download and 3 upload. That's a decent speed, but now the funding mechanism within both capital projects funds and then the infrastructure bill is going to be looking at a minimum of 100/100 symmetrical. And in the case of capital projects funds, you could also go in at 100/20 download and upload speeds as long as it's scalable to that 100/100 threshold. That threshold doesn't exist in the IIJA, with the infrastructure bill, but those speeds are faster than what the state deems as broadband speed. So this amendment would allow us to work with those higher speeds. Plus, it also allows for the funds to be able to be used. The feds have a lot of eligible and ineligible costs, mostly eligible. The capital projects fund provides a lot of leeway in terms of how to fund. By basically basing it on the funding mechanism, it allows us to work within that structure. And I know some of the municipalities and the providers are familiar with that. So this gives them the ability to do, for example, construction. They can, if a project is under construction now in 2022, because of their knowledge of the capital projects funds, they could be reimbursed. This bill, the current SB 85 does not allow for that reimbursement. So that's one of the reasons why we've done that. In fact, that's where the technical change has to be. On the first page of the amendment, we accidentally did not admit the phrase within the child's process or areas where construction has commenced. So I can make sure we get that clarified. But essentially, this allows us to use the funds as efficiently as possible. So that's where we stand so far. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions from the committee? Senator Rosenwald.
Thank you. So did I understand that in December we found out we were getting 122 million?
Yes,
and we don't need general funds?
We don't need general funds. Those will be, yep.
Senator Morse?
Well, that's what I was trying to clarify. So the first paragraph is an appropriation. Is that language necessary to accept the funds that are coming from the federal government? Do we just have to go to fiscal?
I believe so, yes. I mean, Treasury has been sending the paperwork. State Treasury has been sending it to federal Treasury, and I believe so. But I know that there was a sense that they want to make sure that no less than that could be accepted. Right now, we're looking at how we're going to spend that money. So the way it works is that you do a grant plan And we haven't done this yet. We have to work with the federal, say, this is how we're going to spend the $122 million. And then there are project plans. So we're still working on how we're going to spend all the money. Our expectation is we're trying to see if we know at the end that we don't have to put all 122 million into the broadband matching grant initiative. Part 12063 says any federal funds received by the state for the purposes of expanding or improving internet access that are not otherwise committed to other programs. Our expectation is that all 122 will be used for broadband programs, but our feeling is, and I think the number you had said is 60-something, we're kind of looking in that neighborhood to do the build-out. Our feeling is that if we put that amount of money into the broadband matching grant initiative, that should address most of the challenges. We're still trying to figure out how we're going to use the rest of that money that's coming from the feds, but it would be used for broadband purposes.
Yeah, and I've heard other things that would definitely help radio transmissions or things like that for, you know,
That's
first
something.
responders.
Yep, and that's something that's in IIJA. In capital projects funds, the speeds basically have to be that 100/100 or scalable to that. That's not in IIJA, so we are looking at some of those options for that amount of money.
Well, let me just clarify a couple of things.
Okay.
One, I thought the state had two vendors that received money outside of this 122 million directly from the federal government in the North Country.
Okay.
Two, can you work with the sponsors to tighten up the language in the first paragraph? Because I'm sure the language that the Treasury is working on has something specific on how that money's coming into New Hampshire. It may be that we can eliminate fiscal and just put that language right into this bill.
Okay.
And it'd be done. So, you know, accepting the money and being able to spend it. So I think if you work with the sponsors, this language written right now is written if that didn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm happy to do that.
Senator D'Alessandro?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just curious as to say any remainder shall be appropriated from the general fund. Remainder for what? The cost of the project?
I don't foresee us needing to use general funds for any of these projects.
Okay. So, further question, Mr. Chairman? So is this just the sort of language that was already in statute?
The language, yeah, a broadband matching grant initiative, anything above that, that was from the original bill or from line 15. Below that was the SB 85, which was then amended by HB2 last year. So, like I said, we have no intention of spending general funds for any of these projects.
It doesn't call for general fund appropriation. So the question that I'm posing is, it says any remainder should be appropriate from general funds. Well, you're not appropriating any general funds.
Yeah.
So it's a misnomer.
Okay.
From my perspective. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Since no general funds are being used, you wouldn't have no objection for us taking out the language here?
No.
Thank you.
I think it needs to be rewritten, the whole paragraph.
Okay.
Because it may be that he can take his 122 million because we already have it as a state and authorize it all right now in this legislation.
We'll need to see the language from the treasurer.
I can do that.
Any further questions from the committee? Senator Rosenwald?
Thank you. Just wondering about the legislative timeline versus whether the accepting the money through fiscal would be faster, whether it would be helpful to already have the money accepted before this policy that starts on line 17 or 15 begins, or do you not need the money before this policy?
Well, my sense is that however you do it, whether you go through fiscal or not, any projects that happen in 2022, because of the language of the bill, they will get reimbursed, the provider or the municipality, however they move forward, because the application's in place, the federal government has appropriated the money, the language in terms of eligible costs allow us to do that. So in terms of whether or not we get that money out, it's not going to matter so much because, like I said, this is in place. The federal guidance allows us to reimburse those costs that are already happening in projects 2022, and then we do that in this language as well.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions from the committee? Senator Hennessy.
Thank you. So on page 2, there's a little blurb that needs to be corrected. Can you give us the corrected language?
Basically, it would just end, so you would look at Clause B in Section 2, establishment of a challenge process with reasonable timelines through which information may be provided to the state to ensure that funds are not used to build projects in served areas in a period after that. The reason why we take out or areas where construction has commenced is because of the language in the federal guidance. We can reimburse construction costs that are already happening, so there's no challenge.
Can you
to be had.
identify where you were again?
That is, so if you go on to line 29 on the first page of the amendment to line 1 on the second page of the amendment, you basically would put a period after the very first word, areas,
Got it.
and then cross out or areas where construction has commenced.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Catherine Heck, NHMA, speaking in favor.
Good afternoon again, Catherine Heck from the New Hampshire Municipal Association. Thank you for allowing me to speak in support of this bill. While we have not seen the amendment, we do support the changes that it makes, increasing the matching funds from 50 to 75%. We are excited for the opportunity that the municipalities will have to apply for these funds, as SB 85 passed last year, but there was no appropriation made as we are anticipating the federal funds. However, we are curious, as the committee stated, whether or not, as other rescue plan funds have been accepted, if they need to be appropriated through legislation, or if they can be in fact accepted through fiscal committee, as other rescue plan funds have made it through to the municipalities, such as the Gopher programs that we're seeing our municipalities being able to apply for. I don't have anything further to say other than we strongly support this type of legislation, unless you have any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have no one else signed up to speak. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Yes.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Maura Weston, and I'm here today on behalf of the New England Cable and Telecommunications Association. I appreciate the opportunity to be heard. I just received this amendment as I came into the committee room today, and so I'd like to have my clients take a little bit of time to review it. At first blush, I have a couple of quick concerns that I just want to mention. They're a little bit more technical than what we've talked about thus far. For example, in Roman 3, we're striking projects under construction at the time of application shall be ineligible. And we're moving 180 degrees to projects in the planning or construction stages at the time of application shall be eligible. And this language is consistent with what is in 12062 subsection B as well. This is potentially an enormous change with potentially some unintended consequences that we'd like time to examine. For example, if a town has already commenced construction or planning and a town has issued bonds for that purpose, this language could potentially allow reimbursement for that debt. I'm not sure about the legality of that under ARPA, but we'd like to take a look at that. Also, when we look at the section relative to speed, which is on your second page, line 18, I would suggest that this could also lead to some unintended consequences. When the statutes were drafted relative to municipal finance of broadband, we tied the definition of broadband to the federal criteria as a floor. So I'm not sure that it makes sense to put a different speed into statute. I'm not sure that it's necessary, but again, we'd like time to review it. My clients are more expert than I, and this is, 5 minutes, a quick review. So I guess we'd ask for your consideration and hold off on voting this and let us take a little bit of a review and follow up. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
I have one.
Oh, have one? Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, on the concern on the front page, having said that, and I was in the meetings in the beginning back in February where the state was only in total looking at 60-something million in total projects. I would think your clients, and looking at it from wanting to use up the 122 million to the benefit of all the communities, that language helps to do that.
Which language, Senator Morse?
The language that you pointed out on page 1 where
projects under planning and construction
struck projects under construction to be ineligible. If you have limited funds, I guess that's a good line. But now that you have more funds than we know what to do with, and I shouldn't joke about that, but the reality is, why not help these people? So
I think the question is what the funding mechanism has been. My clients, if they're engaging in a public-private partnership like Comcast is doing with Lebanon at this point in time, they've worked out a deal. Lebanon's leveraging federal funds that it has received. Comcast is in for a significant amount of that. What concerns me with this, again, at first blush, is that if a municipality has moved forward with bonding, municipal bonding, could this allow them to sort of reimburse themselves for that debt? And in that case where a municipality has already moved forward, they've engaged with a specific provider. There hasn't necessarily been a competitive process around that. So again, just at first blush, our goal is not to take as many dollars as we can get, but rather make sure that projects are done in a competitively neutral way and as efficiently as possible.
okay, but I do think even that bond being paid off by this money, and I understand the contractual relationship, I got that, but maybe we can write this in a way, I mean, if every community in the state is gonna be paid 100%, 75%, and you already were ahead of the game, you shouldn't be penalized for it. And I think that's kind of what this language was intended to do.
I think if we can get at the concept of competitively neutral, a competitive process, that's been our goal all along. And so that's why I raise this concern. And again, it's a quick glance, and I know that others who I work with have greater expertise than I.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Any further questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on Senate Bill 445? If not, I do have myself signed in favor. Rick Fabrizio as neutral with the BIA. Senator Bob Guida in favor but not speaking. With that, I will close the hearing on Senate Bill 445, and we will be in recess for half an hour.
Sounds good, I'm not speaking. Something wrong?
Well, I can if you like me to.
Was this, sit.
I'll stay as long as I can. I need to be at the school. What's that? Me too, Amanda. I'm closer than usual, so. There. Hey, thank you very much. You're welcome. So I can get out there like 20 up to 3. So an hour. Is this 25 minutes? Yeah. No, I mean, we should have. No, you did great. I don't think I could have done that. Honest to God.
Committee will please come back to order. We will not be having an executive session today. I will point out to the members that you, at your seat, you will find a list of Senate appropriation bills, general and education trust funds that was supplied by LBA. As we go forward and look at the amount of bills, and this doesn't even include the House ones yet, we need to keep our eyes on the surplus that we have. I'll say that taking this snapshot in time right now, that the appropriation request exceed the amount of surplus that we have. So that's something that we will keep our eyes on going forward, and I'll be getting updates probably weekly from LBA so that we're kept up to date on those things. So at that point, with that, we will be adjourned. Yes, question?
We all agree that something needs to be done here. It has to be restructured, so to speak. Is someone going to do that? Is the chair asking someone to do that, or are we bring thoughts to you with regard to that?
No, I think we can probably follow back. I haven't designated. I mean, if somebody wanted to follow up, I know there was language we were going to get from the treasurer. And so there are other things that we can do, particularly when they have to do with ARPA funds. And there are 2 or 3 bills in there that we just need to have the language changes. And so if we can get those things done over the next week, we can get those out of here probably next week. Okay? So we will have no executive session today. Welcome, and we'll be adjourned.